What is this and how can it help you win races? What's up guys, I'm Chris Doughty, aka Doughtinator. Welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about wet weather racing in Gran Turismo 7, whether it be tyre choice, reading the radar weather, reading the wetness meter, and making those strategy calls that will help winning races, either when you're doing those big money credit single player races or any race where you're facing variable weather conditions. Choosing the right tyres for the right conditions make a huge difference in Gran Turismo 7, and one of the best features of Gran Turismo 7 is the dynamic weather and track evolution. Choosing the right tyre for the right track conditions at the right moment in the race can really make or break your race. I've been extensively testing in the wet, dry and variable conditions to help you understand what tyres you need to be on at what point in the race, and how can you read the weather to predict the incoming rain and be ahead of the game. Also, we're going to explain how to read the dangers ahead, how to know when your car will start to aquaplane and become undrivable, and you can avoid situations like this in your races. The first thing to read and understand is the track wetness meter. As you can see now, we're going to drive through a puddle, and that dark blue section, that is surface water. So that top third of the wetness meter is referring to how much surface water there is. So puddles, standing water, anything like that. If you are on racing tyres, and this is the point where the car will start to aquaplane, and it's almost like an on-off switch. This exact point on the wetness meter at the 2/3 mark, this represents 100% wet track. So as long as there's no blue, this point is 100% wet track. So the track is fully wet, but there is no surface water. Once the wetness meter starts to go into the final third in the dark blue, this represents surface water. So puddles, surface water from heavy rain that's currently falling all over the track. This is the danger zone for dry tyres. When you're in the middle third of the wetness meter, the dry tyres, they still work okay. You can still get around, but you have significantly reduced grip. This is where the wets and the inters work really, really well. In the bottom third of the wetness meter, this is where the dry tyres, so the racing hard, racing medium and racing soft tyres, they still work okay. The track is wet, but the track isn't fully covered in water. How I like to break it down is to consider the bottom third of this wetness meter. You are fine on racing dry tyres, so medium, soft, hard. Softer is better during this phase, but all the dry tyres work when you're in this zone. In the middle third and the final third, this is where you need to have intermediate or heavy wet tyres. The heavy wet tyres are more suited to be in the more heavy wet conditions where there is surface water, but both intermediate and heavy wet tyres both work in the middle and the top third of the wetness meter. In this example on screen right now, it's raining heavily and the track is getting wet as the rain is coming down. I've magnified the wetness meter on the left hand side there, and I'm on racing medium tyres, and you can see we are starting to lose grip. The car is still drivable, but we have a reduction in grip. Watch the wetness meter as we come into the final turn at Tsukuba. Watch for the point where it transitions to be dark blue and surface water, and the grip just turns off completely as we turn around the corner. As soon as it comes back, we just aquaplane to the outside of the track. And as I said before, it's almost like an on-off switch. So as soon as you see the wetness meter getting towards that final third and you're on dry tyres, you need to exercise extreme caution because your car will just understeer off the track. There is no way you can really control it or save yourself. You only have to slow down. That's the only way to stop it. On screen right now you can see we can barely control the car. We're having to go at almost a crawling pace just to get around the track. We're losing 20 to 30 seconds a lap when the conditions become like this. In this example, I did a lot of my testing at Tsukuba in a 150 horsepower Mazda MX-5, and if you can imagine, if this was a more powerful car, a race car, then it would be even more harder to drive. Skipping forwards now to almost complete the lap and understand how much slower this lap time is. In the dry, we can do this in about 1:03 on these racing medium tyres. We're going to get to the line in the wet. I'm going to do it in 1:43. So we're a huge 40 seconds slower. And you can see we just can't control the car. The car is aquaplaning. We really have no control of the car. We're going to repeat the test, except this time we're going to have intermediate tyres on the car, and the surface water is almost exactly the same. And you can see right now the car it doesn't have as much grip as the dry, quite obviously, but it's much more manageable. We are in the window of operation where the dry tyres just wouldn't work at all, and we're going to come across to finish the lap in 1 minute 14, so 30 seconds a lap faster on the intermediate tyres when there is surface water. I also went and tried the wet tyres on a dry track to see what the difference was with tyre wear, lap time. Can you get away with running wet tyres on a dry track? And I've put all of the lap time data into a table at the top of your screen right now. The first column is a lap time in seconds on a 100% wet track but with no surface water. In column 2, this is the lap time on a dry track. In these columns we have the difference in time and percentage between a wet and a dry track. In these columns we have the difference between the absolute best lap in seconds and as a percentage. Then we have the difference between the tyres on a dry track in seconds and as a percentage. And then finally we have the tyre wear set to times 20 over 3 laps on a dry track. Now we cannot take that data to be absolute for every car track combination, but we can take it as a ballpark number, and you can quite clearly see that the difference between dry tyres and wet tyres on a dry track is much closer than wet tyres versus dry tyres on a wet track. So this leads me to believe that you're better off making an early strategy call to go to an intermediate tyre or a heavy wet tyre when the rain is about to come down. The risk you have to play off is tyre wear. On a dry track, tyre wear on the intermediate and the heavy wet tyres is significant. It's up to 5 to 6 times more than a regular dry tyre on a dry track, so don't make that strategy call too early. The final thing to point out is a significant danger in running with a dry tyre when there is surface water. I've added that lap time in there, and you can see it's 40 seconds a lap slower. Now that's 40 seconds on a lap that is about a minute long. It's 64% slower lap time than it is in the dry, and that is a huge amount. And not only that, that is with a clean lap. With the aquaplaning danger, you run the risk of having a crash and costing you even more lap time than that. So that covers how to deal with the weather that's currently happening. But how can you predict the weather? Well, you have an MFD, and you can zoom in and zoom out on this MFD, and I recommend all the time to be as zoomed out as possible on the MFD. When you want to flick between whatever settings you want to run in your MFD, you can quickly glance down and see if there is rain coming from a long way away, and this gets you prepared for your strategy through the race. Right now we've got a race at Fuji in the Group 2 cars. This is a custom race. I made it better than the current daily race C because, well, dynamic weather. But you can see there is rain in the area, but it's going to miss us. The rain is drifting across, but as the race progressed, I could see a large amount of rain coming, and it was drifting towards the track. So I had to pit for wet tyres. On the racing medium tyres here, we're going to go into the pits to make a strategy call here and go for the intermediate tyres. I think intermediates are very, very versatile, and we're going to put the intermediate tyres on. And it's not wet yet, the track isn't wet, but we've predicted what's going to happen. Using the weather radar, we've predicted what's going to happen. We can see the rain coming, and now the rain is starting to come down. It is faster to be on intermediate tyres or wet tyres on a dry track than it is to be on racing slick tyres on a wet track, and it's by a considerable amount. As long as you know the rain's coming, you can predict it by a lap or half a lap maybe. And you can see right now all these guys on dry tyres, they just lost the car completely. We're on the right tyres now. Everybody else is starting to pit. We're on the right tyres, the rain is coming down, the track is coming to the tyres that we fitted on the car. When making live strategy decisions during the race, the choice to go onto wet tyres is much more, you've got to be much more reactive than when to go back onto dry tyres when the track is drying out. When the rain comes down, it can come down, and within the space of half a lap, the track can become almost fully wet. And certainly if it's monsoon race conditions, then you can quickly find yourself within half a lap having a completely undrivable car. Using the weather radar zoomed out, it gives you that prediction of when the rain's going to come, and being a little bit early onto intermediate tyres isn't necessarily a bad thing. The only downside with the intermediate tyres is you will wear them out quite significantly. If it's a high wear tyre race, then that is the danger you run going early to intermediate tyres. For the strategy call to go from wet tyres on a drying track onto full dry tyres, now this comes down to me. When the wetness meter goes into the final third, dry tyres will be faster. The problem is often there isn't enough time left in the race to make up the time that it takes to take the pit stop and change to dry tyres. So you've got two things to consider. You've got the current tyre wear. So have you got enough tyre wear left on your intermediate or wet tyres to get to the end of the race? And if you have, it's most likely best to keep on those intermediate tyres. But if you're suffering on tyre wear, and also there's a long way to go in the race, then getting into the pits and switching to those racing hard, medium or soft tyres will really help to improve the lap times when the wetness meter goes into that final third. On screen right now, we're on the dry tyres, but there's just a hint of rain or drizzle coming down. As long as that wetness meter stays in that lower third, then you are still okay on the dry tyres. So when you're looking for the rain coming in, you need to look for a significant amount of rain or a significant blob of rain on that radar to make sure the track becomes wet enough. Once the track is wet enough, you've got at least a few laps, 3, 4, 5 laps to even before the track starts to think about drying out. If the track is going to only get a little bit of rain and dry out pretty quickly after that, then you need to weigh up the cost of 2 pit stops. You need the first pit stop to go onto the wet tyres, and then the second pit stop to go back onto the dry tyres. So you might be better if the rain is in the middle third. You know the car's still safe to drive like that, but it will be a little bit slower, but it might be faster than making those pit stops when you see the rain coming down heavy and you see it getting towards the top of that middle third band, and potentially where you've got standing surface water and certainly puddles. Be very cautious if you're on the racing soft, medium or hard tyres. You will just get the aquaplaning effect, and you will just honestly, there's nothing you can do. No amount of skill is going to save you. You need to find a way to scrub off the speed of your car and get the car to a manageable speed for the conditions. In some of the big money races like the Spa 1 hour race or the Le Mans 30-minute race where you get a big credit payout, they do have dynamic weather, and sometimes it rains heavy and sometimes it doesn't rain much. The dynamic weather in Gran Turismo 7 is fantastic, and I can't tell you exactly what to do each time, but hopefully through this video you've learned what you can do in each dynamic situation to put yourself in the best position to go and win each race. Of course, yes, you could just use the Tomahawk, but where is the fun in that? All we want to do, we're racers, we want to go racing in even machinery. And look at the guy spinning behind. He's on the wrong tyres. He's made the wrong strategy call. We made the right strategy call in this race. I hope you found this video very useful, and hopefully it can improve your race strategy in these dynamic weather races. If you have found it useful, hit that like button. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Don't forget to hit that bell icon to be notified whenever we upload a new video. On screen right now will be a link to another video which you may find interesting. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.